Good morning to you. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still here. Delighted to be joined now by Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer, former Labour MP, of course, as well. Very good morning to you, Kate.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. So much to talk about. Let's get straight to it. Tulip Siddiq, Labour MP, my Labour MP, Hampstead and Highgate, has resigned as a minister, fell on her sword after the standards ethics advisor to the Prime Minister, Sir Laurie Magnus, said there was a perception of a conflict of interest, a bit of a problem over the fact that she'd been given a flat by some allies of her aunt, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and has been mired in a massive corruption investigation, not just the Bangladeshi Prime Minister, but also Tulip herself. Do you think she resigned of her own volition, or do you think she was pushed?
I think it's one of those issues where we see it over and over again. Allegations are made, the person denies it, the allegations continue to be made, more investigations. Ultimately, the person usually goes and either resigns or is pushed. I think in this case, probably she did resign. I think behind the scenes, I'm sure there was a lot of members of the cabinet who did say to her, look, it might be better if you go. But I think Sir Keir Starmer himself, the Prime Minister, probably wanted to keep her as long as possible.
They're big mates. They're dinner party mates, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very good friends. They're very close. She was very supportive of him originally when he became the MP and then became leader. But even though in practice, or in theory rather, she did not break the code, that was the important thing. I suppose that in theory she should have been able to stay. But what he did say, I think, was just so, serious in terms of her knowledge of the kind of house she was living in. I mean, I thought that was quite amusing, that you bought a house or you've got a house, you signed the land registry, and you actually don't know.
Well, she inadvertently misled the public, i.e., a newspaper journalist saying, you've got this home worth 700 grand in King's Cross. She lived in it when she was in her early 20s, but then she's got other ones. I mean, she's got a number of properties, very wealthy woman. Her family, very wealthy in Bangladesh. But, where is it from? Oh, no, my parents gave it to me. And you signed the documents. Well, her parents didn't give it to her. It came from these allies of her totally, let's be honest, corrupt, aunt. She's never distanced herself from her aunt. I don't believe, I'm sure you don't, in guilt by association. We're not North Korea, But nevertheless, Tulip Siddiq herself is the subject. What number? She's on this list of 12 people being investigated on these sort of international corruption investigation. She's never disassociated herself or criticised her aunt's regime, even though, frankly, it's a horrible, nasty regime that imprisons, and we've seen even the case, police beating up, sometimes even murdering opposition critics. I mean, it was never an appropriate appointment to put her in as a Treasury Minister for the city, responsible for anti-corruption, surely.
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, if she'd been in perhaps some other junior position, but to be the minister actually responsible for getting rid of corruption in the city, it really didn't pass, I think the expression passed the mustard in any way.
But how bad is it for Keir Starmer? Because he lost Sue Gray, his chief of staff. He's lost.
I think it's been a bit of a diversion for him over the Chancellor's position because of the criticism that she's been getting. Now, somehow, just over the last couple of days, because this has happened, it's moved it away. But I think it will be. It's just another example of perhaps why some people feel that our Prime Minister isn't really someone who's been steeped in politics and understands the way politics works in this place here in Parliament. Otherwise, I think he might have been more careful about how he made his appointments.
And he had quite a lot of MPs to choose from as well. This is clearly a job for his mate, and he didn't want to sack his mate. But as I say, he's lost Sue Gray, his chief of staff, very acrimonious departure, infighting within his own office in Downing Street.
Julia, she's joining us in the Lords next week or the week after. She's going to be, and then no doubt she'll be given I wouldn't be surprised if she's given a ministerial position in the Lords, because quite a few of the new peers that have come in recently have gone straight into being a front bencher in the House of Lords.
I have a feeling that they want well rid of her now, personally. But he lost his transport secretary, Louise Haigh, as well, literally for basically misleading the Prime Minister. We know about her fraud conviction, and now losing Tulip Siddiq in these circumstances. And there's still big question marks about. Did she? Well, how do we know she inadvertently misled? I mean, the ethics advisor is being very generous. We don't know that at all. I mean, most people would know, I think, where a property had come from. Hey, Mum and Dad, did you give me this home? I mean, someone gave me a 700 grand flat. I'd probably ask where it came from.
Yes. Oh, I just don't think it. If you actually read the detail of what he said and what we know, and of course, let's not forget, there's still another investigation going on, and the link with the Bangladeshi government, because they're not going to give up, because they've
exactly
politics in Bangladesh. It's hitting home here.
Now, time is against us because we have some tech problems trying to get you on. Really quickly, I must ask you about Gerry Adams. Could possibly be getting compensation under basic human rights legislation for being interned in the 1970s after Labour are basically going to repeal some Northern Ireland legislation because they want human rights legislation to trump it. We could pay taxpayers' money. What do you make of that?
It's even more ridiculous because what happened was, with a very unanimous vote even in the House of Lords on this issue, the legacy bill has something in it which would have gone back to the old principles that a Secretary of State was allowed to sign something off by allowing another official or another.
It was a technicality that would allow him to claim.
He was arrested. He was put in on the signature not of the Secretary of State, but of someone more junior, and they used that as the legal process to say that he was not legally, he shouldn't have been put there. And of course, this was all such nonsense. But there was a very strong view from very senior people in the Lords to change this. It got put into the Legacy Act, and of course now the government's come in, wants to completely get rid of the Legacy Act, including that bit. So they're going to have to, I think, be pressurised to come back with a separate little bit of short legislation that would still stop people like Gerry Adams and others, because it's terrible for the victims who are seeing these people not just having done pretty awful things, but then getting compensation for having done some pretty awful things.
Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, said that the decision to repeal the law underlined, he says, the government's absolute commitment to the Human Rights Act.
Yes, he's looking, of course, at the whole Legacy Act, at all the bits about amnesty and so on that was upset some people, although personally, I think, it was actually beginning to show that there was an end to some of this, that we can't just keep going back and prosecuting people, particularly from the armed forces. They were the ones who were getting it. The IRA didn't keep records. The Army did. So I think Hilary Benn will know that this is not going to be acceptable, and will have to find a way of coming back with a short piece of legislation that takes that bit out, that section, and reinstates it.
It's just so unacceptable to the British people, as you say, more importantly to the victims of that political side. So great to talk to you. Glad we got you on air. Baroness Kate Hoey there.